Hello and welcome to today's lesson on the risks associated with gamma rays, X-rays and UV radiation. Today we will first understand the hazards of gamma rays. We will then learn how X-rays are used in medical imaging and the risks associated with X-rays. Finally, we will discuss ultraviolet and how it can affect us. So far, you have learned about the properties of gamma waves, understanding that they are a form of high-energy electromagnetic radiation. Building on this foundation, we can now explore the specific risks that high-energy electromagnetic waves pose to human health and how to mitigate those risks, specifically gamma rays, X-rays, and ultraviolet. Let's get started. Gamma rays are a type of electromagnetic radiation that is highly penetrating. This means they can pass through the human body and interact with the atoms within, ionizing them by knocking electrons out of their orbits. Because of their high energy, gamma rays can cause significant damage to cellular and molecular structures, particularly DNA. When gamma rays ionize atoms in DNA, they can cause mutations by altering the DNA structure. These mutations can disrupt normal cellular functions, potentially leading to uncontrolled cell growth, which is a hallmark of cancer. This means that gamma rays are a serious risk factor for cancer development, particularly with long-term or high-dose exposure. To protect against the harmful effects of gamma rays, certain safety measures are essential. Shielding is a primary method, utilizing materials like lead aprons or barriers to absorb the radiation and minimize exposure to vital organs. Medical professionals handling gamma rays must follow strict guidelines, such as maintaining safe distances and limiting exposure times to reduce risk. X-rays are generated by X-ray machines and are commonly used in medical imaging techniques to produce images of the inside of the body. Because X-rays can penetrate deep into tissues, they are particularly useful for visualizing bones and other internal structures. Similar to gamma rays, X-rays are a form of ionizing radiation. While X-rays are highly beneficial in medical imaging, excessive exposure can damage living tissues and increase the risk of developing cancer. This is particularly concerning for organs that are directly exposed during imaging processes. To mitigate the risks, several protection measures are in place. For example, patients might be shielded with lead aprons to protect areas of the body not being imaged. Pregnant patients are subject to additional precautions to prevent harm to the developing fetus. Health workers who frequently work with X-rays often wear dosimeters, devices that measure their radiation exposure over time, ensuring they remain within safe exposure limits. UV radiation primarily comes from the sun, but can also be emitted by artificial sources like tanning beds. Being a form of ionizing radiation, UV rays have sufficient energy to cause cellular damage. Prolonged exposure to UV radiation can lead to skin damage, such as sunburns, as well as eye damage, resulting in conditions like cataracts or photokeratitis, also known as snow blindness. One of the most critical risks associated with UV radiation is the increased likelihood of developing skin cancer. This happens because UV radiation can cause mutations in the DNA of skin cells, leading to uncontrolled cell growth. This is why it's essential to limit exposure and take protective measures. There are several steps to protect oneself from UV radiation. Using sunscreen with a high SPF rating is vital, as it significantly reduces UV penetration into the skin. Additionally, wearing protective clothing, such as wide-brimmed hats and long-sleeved shirts, can provide considerable protection. Seeking shade during peak sun hours, typically between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., can also minimize exposure. Finally, wearing UV-blocking sunglasses helps protect the eyes from harmful rays. In today's lesson, we examined the risks associated with gamma rays, X-rays, and UV radiation. We learned that gamma rays, with their high energy and penetrative ability, can ionize atoms and damage DNA, increasing cancer risk. Safety measures such as lead shielding are essential to minimize exposure. For X-rays commonly used in medical imaging, excessive exposure can lead to tissue damage and cancer. Protective measures for both patients and health workers, like using lead aprons and dosimeters, help manage these risks. Lastly, UV radiation, primarily from the sun, can damage skin and eyes, raising the risk of skin cancer. Using sunscreen, protective clothing, and limiting sun exposure are effective preventive measures. Watch the rest of the GCSE Physics course at Sophos Education.